Today on Locked On Red Wings, we do a Grand Rapids Griffins check-in with Andrew Rinaldi of AHL News Now.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a podcast producer for the Daily J, a WWJ News Radio podcast. Well, Scotty's host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Scotty, today we are happy to be joined by Andrew Rinaldi. He is kind of our go-to guy for Grand Rapids Griffins check-ins, and it's the midseason for the Wings. It's about the middle of the season for the Grand Rapids Griffins. So we're happy to have you back. Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. As always, it's wonderful to come on here and chat hockey with the boys. A lot of great stuff going on with the Griffins, and happy to come on and share it with you guys again.
Thanks, Hell man. Yeah, man. That's it really is. You're the sole Grand Rapids Griffins I was gonna say beat, but that's obviously not true for the Locked On Red Wings, that is. But yeah, you have become our sole source for Griffins updates. So glad to have you back on.
Glad to be back.
And let's lead off with this too, because I think it's kind of been the storyline with the Griffins currently, that they're on a 5-game heater, 5-game winning streak, and they are currently sitting third place in their division, the Central Division. They have a record of 14 wins, 13 losses, and 3 overtime losses. This is a huge change from last season. Last year, we were talking before the show, you confirmed to me that, they finished last place in the division. Now they're sitting third. It's tight. It's a tight division, like the Red Wings division in the Atlantic, but they're third right now. And Andrew, what's kind of leading to this newfound success as of 31 games into the season?
It's good habits that are finally kind of starting to come together. We saw a lot of it, and just kind of whether it was, bad puck luck or, really kind of the couple tough series against the Texas Stars, which are one of the best teams in the league, that kind of held this team down for a while. But you could tell that they were, these young guys were really kind of starting to figure it out, and you're watching their growth game by game. And now you kind of feel like the results are starting to come in. Now, granted, again, they're with this 5-game winning streak, they've kind of finally just gotten over that 500 threshold, and it's gotten them third in the division. So that kind of shows you, where the state of the Central Division here is in the American Hockey League. But I mean, you take that, 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. So you're seeing, a lot of growth from these kids, especially with, players like Austin Czarnik and Jonatan Berggren just kind of seeming to bounce back and forth constantly between the big club and here at the Griffins. So it's ultimately stick-to-itiveness, I guess. And, between a young coach that's kind of making his debut in Dan Watson and, these just a number of young players that have the talent, but it's all about adjusting to the speed, the pro style game that, they're kind of still a little wet behind the ears, but overall it's all those good habits and playing the game the right way that it's so important at this level that you're kind of starting to see is really coming into their game now.
What's kind of, obviously because you have like boots on the ground and are in, that room and talking to these guys like consistently, what's just the I don't know, this might be like a super general or broad question, but just like, what's the vibe? Like they are, like you said, like not only is there big changes in players and personnel, but also like coaching. Like this is a very new look Griffins team just from last year. And obviously, as you just mentioned, they've been they've improved. Like, what is just the general like atmosphere and kind of like culture and vibe that you get as someone that's like obviously on the beat and like in there all the time?
One of the quotes that stood out to me when I was talking with Dan Watson earlier in this season was just how much he cares about these guys as humans before hockey players. And I think when you build a foundation and a support system like that, it's more fun to come to the rinks, and to see the boys and to get out there and go and practice and everything. So even if you lose a couple games here or there, well, I feel like the lows with this team aren't quite what they were in the last couple of years that I had on the beat and the Ben Simon coach teams, where I feel like they just kind of got in the rut and then the tires start spinning in the mud and it's hard. It was hard for them to gain traction. Next thing you know, they're down there at the bottom of the standings, and it's so hard to pull yourself up once you have dig a hole that deep. So here, I feel like the vibes are just more kind of, again, playing for each other. I know that's such a cliche, especially in this sport and everything. But
It was a cliche question. Don't worry.
Well, I'm trying to vary it up here, but I do earnestly believe that there's definitely more. There's a little more playing for each other, and you're starting to see those results on the scoreboard more so than just vibes in the locker room. And again, it's kind of that stick-to-itiveness. It's to a certain degree, kind of like watching the transformation of the Lions team on the smaller scale, where it's like you have a mess up, but you just kind of throw it behind you and it's the next play.
There's a culture that's being put in place, you could say. Like,
yeah.
This is, and then that's something too that I wanted to bring up. There's a lot of frustration right now, and we'll talk about Edvinsson and Berggren, I'm sure, at some point in this episode. There's a whole list. We were talking before the show, like last year, you would come on and there'd be like 2 prospects where we would highlight. And, I'm writing down a list, and I have 9 guys on this little piece of paper right here that I want to talk about and ask questions about. Like, that's a huge boon. And as Scotty said, that injection of youth and new coaching is going to take what you would think would take longer to gel than it is. And now, again, 5-game win streak has kind of launched them up in the standings right now. But when it comes to like why some of these players are still in the minors that maybe don't deserve to still be there, that deserve that promotion, obviously an Edvinsson, a Berggren, or even an Albert Johansson, who's been really good, from what I understand, with the Griffins. Is it maybe a little bit that they want them as young players to learn to play together, because this is a group that's a large part of them are looking to play then together again in the Red Wings uniform? That way they can have this chemistry already in place. Is that kind of, you think, is that a vibe you're getting from some of these players and why they're still in the AHL?
Oh, definitely. I mean, one of the biggest X factors for this squad, I mean, we talked a little bit about Edvinsson, but you brought up Albert Johansson. I mean, when you have that offensive dynamic and the big Swedish worm that can move like the wind out there in Edvinsson, and then you tie him together with a guy who's just a steady rock in his own zone like Albert Johansson, it's hard not to see the management in Detroit go, okay, like this is going to be a locked defensive pairing, not just here in Grand Rapids, but we want to see this up in Detroit as well. So a lot of it, is building chemistry. And, we can talk about the contract situation, veteran free agents brought over, and, the old, adages of bringing, keeping these kids overcooked, I guess, down there. But there's really, I don't see the downside in having a young kid like Edvinsson, who's still growing in his game, to, sharpen those skills with, 28 minutes a night and on top line scenarios and every special team situation that you could think of. It's just, that's not a bad thing than, having to go up and kind of learn on the fly in Detroit. Is it more exciting to have a number 6 overall pick with the Wings? Yes, it is. I'm not going to lie, even as a Griffins beat reporter. But, there's certainly something to be said about this method. And, this isn't Steve Yzerman's first rodeo. You've seen how the players in Tampa Bay grew down in Norfolk and in Syracuse. So you gotta just, I know it's another term that a lot of fans are kind of growing sick of, is trusting the whole Yzer plan thing. But when you see the results kind of on the ice, it speaks for itself. And patience is not something that, is lost on fans, especially on the internet that I've had to interact with. But it's something that we're going to have as these kids continue to learn the game and grow. But you got to be excited. I know we picked the perfect time in this, in the midst of a winning streak to talk about it, but you got to be excited with the results.
Yes, absolutely. We got to take a quick break, but Andrew, Scotty, when we return, let's get into one of these 9 players that I have listed. No way we're going to get to all of them, but we'll try our best. So we'll talk about that in segment 2. Stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. The NFL season is wrapping up. In fact, it has wrapped up, and we're heading into Super Wild Card Weekend, which the super prefix is kind of silly if you ask me, but it's on the way, and the Lions are hosting the Rams, and there is still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use with so many different ways to bet, like with the live same game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab, make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. Scotty, yesterday I got the Vancouver Canucks. I think I said plus 130. I put $5 down on them to beat the New York Rangers on the road, and they did. I won $11, a little over $11. So it's $6 into the wedding fund, making Allison a very happy fiance. So you too can put money in your wedding fund by visiting FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Allison never sees any of the money that it just goes right back in other bets. Scotty, I asked the last question. You want to take us off here? There's so many players we could lead off.
Yeah, man. There's a lot of players we could start with. I guess we've kind of been dancing around Edvinsson already, so we might as well just kind of dump and dive, not jive. We can jive. We can dive head first in to that conversation. Just obviously you talked about him marinating and kind of sharpening his skills down in Grand Rapids, and obviously he's had the cup of coffee in the NHL this year. Just talk about his season as a whole, what he's improved on, and I guess I don't even know if this is a fair question, but how close is he? But if you say that that's much more determined on the Red Wings roster than anything he's doing at this point, that's totally fair as well.
Yeah, for sure. He has just been incredible, honestly. You can just tell he's at his skill set has him at another level compared to a lot of the players in this league, and that's not a small feat. There's a lot of good players in the American Hockey League, and sometimes he seems like a man against boys, which is incredible because he was born in 2003, but yeah, I don't want to bring that one up, but he's with the puck, without the puck, his IQ, if he seems like sometimes he just works, a couple steps ahead of the play, and with his skating ability, he's able to get into these areas of the open ice, and it just opens up so much for this offense here. And you've seen him put up a bunch of points and also, be responsible defensively in his own end. I think at this point, I know, and before the win streak, he had a rough series against Texas, and I think just kind of those tweaks where consistency being that kind of dominant night in and night out. is like he's not far from being a regular at the next level. I think it's those couple of shifts where it can, it can kind of bite him. Maybe he tries to get ahead of the play and a bad pass or something, the puck's going the other way. And a lot of times you can recover as such an elite skater, but you're not going to have that kind of time up there at the NHL. So it's just maybe, making him some couple smarter decisions here and there, but he's not far off. I would say he's not far off. And it's, I know with everything that's going on in Detroit, you kind of want to push him up there and see what you got. But, again, it's, I would rather see him kind of work on those tweaks here and then be the absolute monster that we know he can be at the next level than a guy who's going to make those mistakes and then they're going to really bite him. And again, learning on the fly is just, it's a different level at the NHL. It's everything's coming at you faster and those guys are coming at you harder and stronger. And this is just a better place to kind of make those tweaks in his game. And, like I said, not far off, but enough where it's take a little more time. And I'm not saying that for my own sake, because I want to see him a little more.
Well, and I almost wonder too, and this is me playing devil's advocate, but when from all accounts, it seems like Simon Edvinsson is almost like you mentioned, he makes mistakes still, but because he's got such elite skating, he can almost make up for him. You do wonder almost if I'm speculating. I haven't seen the games you have, but you want to wonder if maybe the league is just getting too easy for him and where he's getting a little bit ballsy with his plays, making those mistakes where he's going to form bad habits instead, where if he's ready for the NHL, it's going to be a wake-up call. It's like, okay, well, I'm not good enough here to make those mistakes, so I got to play smarter. Now, that's just, I'm reaching for that one. I'll fully admit that. But like that thought does cross my mind.
Yeah, and there's certainly something to be said about kind of like, over ripening of prospects and everything. Where, yeah, if you're just, pulling from my own experience, if you're in a B League player, but you're playing down at the D League, you're going to try some stuff that you can get away with because you can, versus whether you're with, your regular squad and not just subbing in. So there's certainly something to be said about that. And, maybe that would be, better for his game, or it's, you're facing that kind of speed night in and night out, and you need to learn to play at that level versus down here at this one. But I still think, it's just the couple tweaks, especially kind of in his own zone. I think, the way his mind works in the offensive zone, I think he's there for sure. But where it's really going to make or break his game is, playing with the puck in his own end. Mm-hmm. And it's not far off, but it's just enough where I'm like, give me another handful of games. And then, I once those, whether it's an injury or, it's the trade deadline comes in. And then I think once you see Simon kind of grab that spot, I don't think he's going to be coming back down here to Grand Rapids.
And so I do wonder too, there's been a lot of people, we saw Marco Kasper in one game last year with the Detroit Red Wings. And to be fair, he didn't really look all that out of place. So a lot of people had really high expectations for him. And I think a lot of Red Wings fans, the ones that are paying attention at least, feel like they're disappointed almost by the fact that he has 14 points in 31 games, not realizing that he's 19 years old. What are your big takeaways from the season Marco Kasper has had with the Grand Rapids Griffins right now?
Well, his first 10 games, he had 1 goal and no assists. So when you take away that kind of adjustment period there, his numbers don't look bad at all. And when you're going through this 5-game heater, he's got 6 points. So you're definitely starting to see Marco kind of coming around, really getting comfortable in his game here and see him super involved in on both ends of the ice. And that's exactly what you want to see. He was coming in looking really good defensively and was making good plays with the puck. It wasn't like, he was really struggling out there. I think it was just a mixture of puck luck and making plays at without the space that he saw over in Europe and just at this speed. So now that you're kind of starting to see him get acclimated, he's really kind of been growing up in front of our eyes, and it's been great. And you're seeing his success and the team's success are kind of going hand in hand here. So again, it's such a knee jerk reaction to, the first couple, the first quarter of the season. I admittedly probably not the best we'd want to see from Marco, but again, he's a teenager. I didn't even know what I was doing with my life when I was 19, so I'm surely not going to try and put a kid on with all that pressure like him in the spot. So he's really kind of, like I said, kind of eased into his game here, and the puck's kind of finding its way to him, and seeing the smarts and the IQ that he's got in his zone, knowing where the puck's got to go, knowing where he's got to go. You're seeing it come along. I know, again, we want to see our first round picks absolutely torching it in the minors and before we decide to pull them up, but you got to take into consideration that these are a lot of the guys that are going to be taking that next step up there in the NHL. This is no slouch for anyone, least of all, a kid who's 19 years old.
Absolutely. We got to head to another quick break. But when we return, we'll just talk more about some of the many prospects that are on this team. So stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. I know we come into sports to escape from the crazy realities of life, but according to the FDA, we are in the middle of one of the worst flu seasons in over a decade. Well, you can be prepared if you grab a Jase case that has a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. This stuff can happen to any of us. Visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jasemedical.com and use code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. We're joined by Dan Rinaldi of AHL News Now. He's given us a mid-season check-in with the Grand Rapids Griffins. Scotty, again, I think you lead us off here in segment 3.
Yeah, I'm kind of a table setter. I mean, another fairly obvious one, but I really want to talk Berggren just because he has been one of the, I think at times, maybe not over the course of the full season, but at times maybe the most talked about Griffin within the fan base, just because there was some sort of an expectation after the end of last year that he would just obviously have a spot on opening night this year. And then the Wings obviously went out and signed 11 free agents and traded for DeBrincat, and that was no longer the case. And I think a lot of people were somewhat surprised when they first realized, oh shoot, that means no room for Berggren. And just, he's similar to Edvinsson, had a cup of coffee up here a few times. But I think just what have you seen from him? Is he obviously just taking the situation well, I think is a big thing on everybody's mind, but also, on the ice, obviously, what improvements is the Griffins coaching staff were you here? What improvements are they looking at for him to continue to, ascend and get back to being a regular in the NHL?
Yeah, I think, everyone's kind of familiar what his game is with the puck and what he can do with it. And down here in Grand Rapids, I mean, he's been doing everything that, is we've come to know about Bergie's game. And you're starting to see him more involved kind of without the puck. The other night against, I believe it was Cleveland, you saw him chase down a forward who was almost out there on a breakaway, and he lifts the stick and negates the scoring chance. And those are the kind of plays that you really want to see from him. Because we all know what he can do offensively, but it's that defensive positioning. It's, taking the hits to make the play, those kind of stuff that are really going to separate him from a guy who can create all these chances here in the American League, and a guy who's going to consistently produce at the next level. And I've really wanted to kind of see him engaged a little more physically. I know he's not the biggest guy, right? But I wanted him to take a page out of like Lucas Raymond's playbook. Razor wasn't a guy who took a lot of hits the last couple of years, but you really kind of this year, I think everyone see him take a step in his game, especially, below the goal line and everything. And that's more like the kind of stuff I want to see from Bergie, at least consistently. You see flashes of it. You see him go in and get after it. And you're like, all right, like let's see more of that. And then he'll kind of shy away a little bit here and there. And that's, nothing against the guy. I wouldn't want to go into the corner against a 220-pound defenseman either. But, those are the kind of stuff that again, it's all about consistency. I think everyone in this league has some kind of tools one way or another to really, make an impact at the next level. It's just about making those plays shift after shift. You don't have to go out there and go bar down or set up someone for a goal to make an impact, and that's for like rounding his game out here in Grand Rapids is going to be the key to being more involved up there in Detroit. And it's a work in progress still. And I'm certain after getting 40 games in Detroit last year, I'm certain he's
67, I think.
Oh man, that was really
crazy.
off.
Let me double check, but it was a lot.
Yeah. So I'm certain, the frustration's there. I mean, it's natural for anyone who, again, I thought he was going to be a staple for sure. And then when I got the announcement that he was being sent down, I was like, oh, okay, like great for me. But obviously, you want to see him kind of ascend and have his game take the next step. So again, it's little, it seems like little tweaks here and there, but that's the difference between being at the NHL level or being down here in the American League.
Yeah. And then another guy I want to talk about too, and obviously I feel like we should definitely talk about Cossa at some point, but I have another guy I want to talk about before that. And I mentioned him earlier in the episode, Albert Johansson. I feel like he gets kind of overlooked by Red Wings fans because of the fact that Simon Edvinsson and now Axel Sandin Pellikka exist. Like they're the new shiny toy first round draft picks. But Albert Johansson has been absolutely stellar for the Grand Rapids Griffins. We don't like to use plus minus up here at the NHL because it's just not a very telling stat of what this individual is doing, but there's not many advanced stats for the AHL level. He does lead the Griffins in plus minus. He's a plus 13 and he leads that category by 6 over Nolan Stevens, who is second on the team with plus 7. This is a guy who you were mentioning earlier eats a lot of minutes for the Grand Rapids Griffins. He has 12 points in 25 games, half point a game player out of a defenseman that's not necessarily his game. Like, is he let me phrase it this way. How close is he in reality?
I think after Edvinsson, he would 100% be the next defender call up. And I wouldn't be completely shocked to see him getting a taste before you give Edvinsson the full-time job there, because he's been that impressive, especially in his own zone, and even surprisingly in the offensive zone lately. He's been putting a couple assists in. He had a 2-goal game the other night against Cleveland. So when you can find ways to chip in offensively there on top of his game, just so steady. I described him as a rock earlier, and that's exactly what he is, especially when you have the 8-foot-long reach of Simon Edvinsson to pair with them. There's not a lot getting past those two. So he came on the scene immediately last year and looked completely, ready for that next step. And it's been impressive to watch him play with just such poise in his own end. And I'd love to see him get his own cup of coffee with the Wings up here this year, because he's kind of blown me away since he's walked in through the door last year, and he's only been getting better in my eyes. So with a lot of the kind of turnstiles that's been going on in Detroit's defensive end, I say why not? Let's see what he could do against NHL competition.
do you think that, and I want to get to Cossa as well, but like, do you think that, and I know you alluded to it a little bit earlier as well, is there kind of a feel that that pair is going to go beyond the AHL and it's going to be like, hey, these two, they've built so much chemistry and been so effective. Why not have them kind of work through the system together and see if they can be an effective pair long-term at the NHL too?
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of a sticking point of this organization now that these guys have kind of really been starting to develop some chemistry together. To let's keep it rolling, why break up a good thing? And if you can make that seamless transition and have them keep these guys comfortable with each other, you already know each other's cadence and everything. Okay, if the puck's over here, I know he's going to move it behind the net or whatever, and it makes it more seamless for everyone. I think that's definitely a target for the Wings organization, is to kind of keep these guys together. Obviously, might have to shuffle lines here and there,
Sure.
but when you can have these guys comfortable and playing in their own game and growing together, it makes it so much easier for players, coaches, everyone.
All right. Sebastian Cossa. He
Cossa.
has a .901 save percentage this year with the Grand Rapids Griffins. Obviously, he was lights out with the Toledo Walleye. Oh, my goodness. Almost drew a blank. Toledo Walleye last season. Second half of the year, he really turned it on. He's been splitting time with Michael Hutchinson, who's got a 903 himself. He played himself into a contract. Very happy for him. But how's Cossa looked overall? Has he been hot, streaky, hot, cold? Has he been kind of consistently this good throughout the season? Like, what's your takeaway?
He's been as he's gotten more starts, I could tell he's been more comfortable. I think he played his best hockey when Hutchinson went up, and it was like, all right, you're kind of the guy now at this point. And again, bit of a struggle there against Texas on the road, but they're the highest scoring number one team in the AHL, so you're gonna kind of get you're gonna get those nights. It is what it is, especially for a young goaltender like him. But on the road against Iowa the other night, he probably had his best game since opening night, where he had 40 saves, I believe, in the win there. So he's certainly coming along. I mean, he's going to have his rough stretches, as any goaltender would, but to compare, say, I know everyone loves to make comparisons between him and Jesper Wallstedt. Wallsted's first season in the AHL, he had a .908 save percentage, and Cossa is kind of hovering around that. So I feel like you're kind of seeing them right on track with exactly where you want him to be. I feel like his positioning is becoming much stronger. He's not he used to be a little wild around the crease from what I saw, and I think you're kind of seeing him more stay at home. He's using that big body to kind of square up and not rely so much on his athleticism, but to kind of work to his strengths. And he's not gonna be the savior of this team that's going to come in next year and win you 35 games, but it's going to be a project. He was drafted as a long-term project, but he's got the tools there. It's, again, I sound like a broken record, but it's all about working on the consistency at this level. And I've really enjoyed what I've seen from Cossa. I know the shiny new toy in the cabinet right now is Trey Augustine, and we want to throw Cossa, already to the side, but the Wings they know what they're doing with a young goaltender that's got all the tools here to be a really good starter at the next level. And he's making exactly the kind of progress that you want to see. He's not getting caved in. Yeah, he's not Dominic Hasek, but we need to stop with these video game expectations for these kids who I think Cossa's maybe just turned 21. Yeah, okay. So I'm not ready to put the world on his shoulders yet. He's got a long way to go, and he's trajecting. Is that even a word? I'm going to go with it. Just the right way that he needs to be right now.
Awesome. Scotty?
Yeah.
Anything else?
I don't think so. My last question with Cossa was just going to be and you kind of already alluded to it, so we don't have to go too in depth, but was long-term timing, like, I think there's some people that are, like, oh, at the end of this year, like if people keep getting hurt, like whatever. And then there's some people that are like, oh, 3 years from now, maybe, you know what I mean? Like I think there's just a lot of varying opinions on when he will be ready to make that jump. And, as you already talked about and are well aware, like obviously contract status has a lot to do with that and whatnot. Just from a timing perspective, where do you think we are on the train that is Cossa?
Yeah, it's goaltending is so hard to project. It's goaltenders are each one has their own arc for development, and you get guys that are late bloomers. You have guys who have all the tools but just can't seem to put it together. At this stage, I'd probably say, again, I'm gonna follow the next comparable in that draft class, which is Wallstedt, who I believe just got called up to Minnesota for what I assume is going to be his first couple starts. I don't expect him to stay up there. I would envision the same for Cossa. He's going to play the entire season out in Grand Rapids here, especially with 3 goaltenders up there in Detroit, and with Hutchinson kind of as insurance and an emergency. Next year, you might see Cossa up for a handful of games, depending on how he's continuing to grow here in Grand Rapids. I don't think you're gonna see him become a full-time starter. I mean, it's a like I said, he's a long-term project. He's gonna take some time to develop. All goaltenders are, whether you're a first or a 7th rounder. That's just the nature of the position. So I say, you kind of give him a couple more seasons, kind of really fine tune everything in his game and in his toolbox. I still see, a bunch of NHL games in his future. I know, again, Trey Augustine is the big, obviously, gold medal around your neck will do that for you, but it's not a bad problem to have too many good goaltenders in the organization. No. Sebastian Cossa is certainly one of those.
Awesome. I mean, if we had more time, I'd love to ask you about Carter Mazur and then what the heck's going on with Elmer Soderblom, but I don't think we're going to be able to get to that in this episode. But there'll be more episodes down the road. Andrew, why don't you tell the people where they can find you?
Absolutely. So you can find my work at AHL News Now, and I'm also, for those social media active, I'm on, I guess, I'm still going to call it Twitter. No matter what, I'm still going to call it Twitter. You can find me at GR_Rinaldi_. If you see a man on top of a mountain in the background, you've got the right man. And I live tweet during Griffins games. I post my content on there. I love just interacting with fans, talking about the game of hockey or just kind of life in general. So if you're, curious about some of the young players that might be suiting up for the Red Wings here very quickly, come check me out. I'll chat with you during games or during downtime at my day job or whatever. I love getting to know this fan base. It's been fantastic. It's been a great ride, and I love to give back to the people when I can.
Absolutely,
man. Our like I said, not obviously not our beat writer, but kind of our beat writer in our hearts. In our hearts, he's
spiritual beat writer,
right? Yeah.
Awesome. Andrew, again, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Scotty and I will be back tomorrow, and we'll preview the game against the Edmonton Oilers that's taking place on Thursday. Thank God that's a home game. Done with the West Coast road trip. That was awful. So we'll do that and probably have a different topic for you too, because we're not going to preview Edmonton for 3 segments. So stay tuned for that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Red Wings. Segment 1 tomorrow of Locked On Red Wings. Scotty, you got a thing you got to say though.
We ball, man.
We ball.
Golly.